All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us today for this fireside chat. We're here today for a CTV vibe check where we'll share marketers' take on this hot performance channel. My name is Kelly Lindenau, and I'm the editor of Demand Gen Report, and I'll be hosting this chat today. Before we get to the exciting stuff, I have a few housekeeping items I'm going to run through with you first. So, like I just mentioned, I'm the editor of Demand Gen Report, which is an online media company for B2B professionals. We offer various resources covering the latest trends in sales and marketing. So when we wrap things up here, I'd encourage you to visit our website to explore what we've been working on. And then while you're over there, make sure to sign up for our weekly email newsletter where we distill all of our news and insights each week. And then I'm also excited to share that we currently have a reader interest survey in the field. Each year, I put out this survey to get a pulse check on what DGR's readers are interested in learning more or less about. It's just 5 easy questions, and your feedback will be crucial to helping shape my 2025 coverage. We have the link to the survey in our resource section, so make sure to share your thoughts on that when we wrap up. And then today's session is taking place on the On24 platform, and I'm going to give you a brief explainer. So first, I'd like to point out our Q&A widget. We're hoping to make this an interactive session, so please feel free to submit your questions at any time. We'll reserve about 10 minutes at the end for the Q&A, so make sure to chime on in. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we also have a resource section that has a variety of assets for you to explore. The Mountain team shared some valuable resources, so I encourage you to check them out. And then moving things right along, we also have our survey widget. This will allow you to share your thoughts and feedback about this session in particular, and it will launch automatically when we wrap up here. But you could also fill it out at any time. And then finally, we are recording a session, and we'll send the recording over to your inbox shortly after we wrap up. All right. Without further ado, I'm super excited. He leads all product performance and content marketing efforts at Mountain. Ali is also an adjunct lecturer at Northwestern University, teaching product marketing in the Integrated Marketing Communications graduate program. Previously, Ali served as principal product designer at Symantec, working on the Norton Security and LifeLock lines of consumer software. Prior to Symantec, Ali oversaw digital marketing for the Digital Media Services division of Verizon. All right, Ali, thank you so much for joining us today. I know I briefly just teed you up a little bit, but before we get going here, do you want to share a little bit more about yourself, your background, and your role at Mountain?
Sure. I think beyond the things that you already mentioned, the thing that's important for people to know is the cool thing about my job at Mountain is I market to marketers. We our target audience are my colleagues in the industry, and so everything that we'll be talking about today, I'm going to be saying from the perspective of a colleague, somebody else who kind of works in marketing and faces the same challenges as everybody else does. So, but to that end, I hope this is a little disarming to everybody who's kind of like tuning in. I'm like you all with the same challenges, and again, it's a really cool part of the job. In some ways, it makes product marketing kind of easier, knowing that your target market is yourself. So, yeah.
All right, perfect. So let's dive into this. So our teams actually just partnered on a survey for the current state of CTV advertising. And one of the results there was that folks who haven't added CTV to their ad mix pointed to reasoning such as they don't do TV advertising, or they thought CTV just wasn't the right channel to reach their target audience. So what would you kind of say to an advertiser who listed those concerns?
Totally valid. It completely makes sense why someone would feel that way. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I think the one most obvious one is there's just generally a perception of TV advertising being the most prestigious, but also the most expensive form of advertising out there. And so, with that sort of perception, I think a lot of growth stage, company marketers are probably looking at TV thinking, yeah, not right now. Like that's just maybe something more aspirational. But right now, I need to kind of prioritize channels that convert, and so for that reason, they may not be taking TV seriously. So it's not an unreasonable place for these folks to be kind of coming from. And that being said, the landscape has changed considerably with regards to connected television and the accessibility of TV advertising to marketers. The thing at Mountain that we're really proud of is, about 90% of the advertisers on the Mountain platform have never advertised on TV before. So we're every day dealing with folks who are like the respondents of this survey, who are just kind of like, for a variety of reasons, thinking that TV is sort of unattainable or, again, too expensive, or like there's other aspects to it too, which I'm sure we'll talk about, which is like creative considerations. I don't have a TV commercial. How am I going to be able to put that together to run something on television? Or, the messiness of targeting of linear TV, where it's just kind of crossing your fingers and hoping that your ad and your target audience has the highest overlap with a TV show and a TV network at a certain, set amount of set time. Um, all that stuff is kind of irrelevant in the case of connected television. And so, really, my sort of message to those marketers is, um, there's a way to do connected TV advertising that's performant, that's efficient from a targeting standpoint, it's highly measurable, and looks and feels like all the other performance marketing channels that you're already using. TV's sort of kind of moved along pretty quickly. And that's the pace of development's tremendous. I remember going to sort of industry events about like just 5 or 6 years ago, and they were about like sort of connected TV generally. And the thing that kind of surprised me was like it was so nascent at that stage, because like the subject matter at these conferences was just like explaining what programmatic is, and really sort of fundamental underpinnings of connected TV. And in a relatively short amount of time, we're now to a place where connected TV is a huge traffic driver. It's again, it's driving tons of conversions for a lot of advertisers, and it's become so efficient that B2B advertisers are thriving on connected TV right now too, which I think B2B marketers sort of get my point when I say that. B2B marketers are way more constrained with the channels that they use compared to B2C marketers, and even B2B marketers with all of their constraints of really adhering to tight, you know, cost per acquisition sort of targets, and also being beholden to just a handful of like advertising channels. They're thriving too. So I think that alone is a great bellwether for the success of CTV.
Absolutely. And then one consistent trend, we saw throughout the survey was that interestingly, while many brands first turned to CTV as a brand awareness tool, it's kind of now being used as a performance channel. So could you expand on some of the factors that contributed to that shift?
Yeah, I think for CTV to cross the chasm, to become a legitimate performance marketing channel, it needed real sort of performance marketing parity with the other big performance marketing channels, namely paid search and paid social. When you think of these channels fundamentally, one of the big aspects of these platforms working is an aspect of accountability. When you set up a paid social or paid search channel, let's be obvious, we're talking about Google search and Facebook ads, but when you're setting them up, one of the first things you have to do is set up tracking pixels. You need a site-wide pixel on your website, and also you need a way of measuring conversions that take place on a website. And I know, speaking from the perspective of Mountain, just because that's what I'm most familiar with, that was the big breakthrough for Mountain that really enabled us to grow like crazy with marketers. Was specifically when we gave them the ability, and this is what you do when you sign up for Mountain. The first thing you do is you put a tracking pixel on your website, which is again very familiar to performance marketers. But the tracking pixel being on your website doesn't just help with targeting, it also helps with the measurement of things. And so, again, if you want a good performance marketing channel that you want to rely on, you need to be able to measure the outcomes of these campaigns. This is one of the sort of, I got to say, like this, it's super hyperbolic, but like it's the most magical part of running like a performance TV campaign, as we call it, is running ads on televisions. So people are sitting on their couches, seeing commercials served to them, and then in your reporting, actually seeing site visits sort of materialize based off of those impressions that are happening on television sets. And so again, just being able to do that attribution is sort of a prerequisite for this to be taken seriously as a performance marketing channel. We could talk more a little bit about how some platforms actually do that attribution. The other thing is targeting. You need really efficient targeting to be able to have a good performance marketing channel. This is, again, something that we kind of take for granted on other performance marketing channels. And there's a variety of methods of targeting. In the case of paid search, keyword targeting is a tremendously efficient way to target your ads when when we're dealing with a search engine where people are going in and kind of stating what they're interested in. And on the paid social side, there's a variety of ways of doing audience-based targeting, whether it's with first-party or third-party data. Same deal here, and this is, again, another one of those things that's a big departure from advertising on linear traditional television compared to connected TV. Because, again, that nagging perception of TV and it being kind of untargeted or like a very broad brand awareness tool is because, as I mentioned before, the way you're targeting on TV is you take your target audience and then you look at every network and show and time slot and you try to find the best overlap between the two. And as we know as marketers, as much overlap as you can find, there's still going to be tons and tons of wasted impressions there. And so going back to that first question, again, you can't blame a lot of like growth stage marketers for having this perception of TV advertising, not only being a brand awareness tool, but also something that's just, a shotgun, And in this case, coming back to this question with regards to how has it been legitimized as a performance marketing channel, well, really, however you choose to target your audiences, you can do that. So in the case of first-party data, you have that pixel running on your website, so you could target, your website traffic in the same way that you would do retargeting campaigns on other channels. Show these ads to people who only viewed this category of products or this specific page on my website. Or, speaking of first-party data, if you have like a loyalty program, you're sitting on tons and tons of email addresses, or if you're a B2B marketer and you're doing ABM, again, and you have like lots of email addresses to target, you can target users accordingly. And then, of course, there's third-party ways of targeting users as well. Some really nice audience segments and vendors for these audience segments that everyone's familiar with because they've targeted them on other DSPs or other ad channels. That's available too. So if you're selling mortgages and you just want to use a third-party data segment for people who are actively in market for a mortgage, you can serve TV ads to them as well. And so when you consider this compared to the alternative of linear TV advertising, if you're Rocket Mortgage and you're looking to get ads in front of people who are in market for a mortgage, you could do some proper brand awareness linear TV advertising and target people very broadly on linear television, or you can find in-market segments and also target people on lists that you already have. It's far more efficient. And on top of that, the site's pixeled, so as soon as visitors start hitting the website, you very neatly have an accounting for how much traffic is coming to your website by way of your TV campaign, and also how many conversions you're driving specifically. So it's like I said in the beginning, it looks and feels and like any other performance marketing channel.
So then you briefly mentioned measurement in the pixels and all of that. I'd like to kind of take a few minutes to expand on that a little bit more. So if there's any folks out there who aren't aware or just uncertain about measurement opportunities, what sort of measurements are available for these CTV campaigns?
In the case of Mountain, just because that's the platform I use, I'm not even saying it as sort of like a spokesperson for the company, but just more so as a marketer who uses Mountain for our CTV campaigns. And I'll talk more about that in a bit too, of what my experience is like running a marketing team that's highly dependent on CTV. But in the case of Mountain, really, there's a system that we have called verified visits, and it's a system that we've created ourselves. And essentially, the way it works is as people are watching television and they're in your target audience, they're going to be served ads from Mountain on a household level. Now, Mountain itself maintains a device graph of over 99% of all households in America. And this device graph is continuously updated. And if something is greater than 30 days old, we drop it off the device graph. That's how recent the data within the device graph is. Now, as I mentioned before, you have the pixel running on the website. And what happens is a reconciliation essentially happens as users are visiting the website, where we match every inbound user to the website to the device graph to see if that household has been served any ads over the course of the campaign. And that's the linkage that we're able to make. And then as they continue to browse on the website, then we have an ability to report back to the advertiser what their actions are, what pages they browsed, and ultimately if they converted. There's a lot more to a system like this. It's not totally beholden to just IP. There's other signals that Mountain is able to use to really identify households for the sake of targeting. But all of this is done in a sort of above board, privacy compliant sort of way. But this has been really one of the biggest reasons why a lot of advertisers have been succeeding with a platform like Mountain, because again, it's kind of giving them the accountability that they kind of expect from other performance marketing channels. It's doing the same here for them.
Perfect. And then in B2B in particular, TV optimization and TV advertising wasn't really accessible for folks just because how difficult it was to target. It was a lot of upfront costs. It's kind of hard to track. And obviously CTV is making this much more accessible. So could you kind of just walk through how CTV changed, the TV advertising process for marketers and sales?
Yeah, I mean, historically, there just really wasn't any B2B advertising you'd really see on linear TV. Like the only examples I could kind of think about it is I'm not a golf guy, but like I know that Sunday afternoon when a big PGA tournament is kind of like wrapping up, you'd see like a commercial for like Boeing or some other like very large company that doesn't sell direct to consumer products. Which would always be kind of amusing because as a marketer you kind of understand what's happening there. The Boeing or their agency feels like the biggest overlap with their target audience for that campaign is probably people who are watching PGA golf on the weekend. There's probably a lot of demographic research that went into that media buy in that case. But outside of that, you generally don't see a lot of B2B advertising for a lot of the reasons that we've already discussed. As a B2B advertiser, you're under the gun with regards to efficiency. You can't really afford to do a lot of brand marketing, truthfully. It's not to say B2B marketers don't do it, but they really don't have the freedoms that B2C marketers do as it relates to doing a lot of brand marketing. You certainly see it with like the very large B2B companies like Salesforce or Oracle, but most B2B marketers don't have that sort of luxury. And since they're really kind of budget conscious and they need to kind of target their ads as efficiently as possible, there's just really no content on TV that would be a safe bet for a B2B marketer to comfortably advertise. Maybe if you're, selling spreadsheet software and ESPN showing like the world championship of Excel, like maybe that's like a rare instance where a B2B marketer might find some sort of value in advertising directly on linear TV, but it's just not happening. But for all the reasons that I mentioned already, CTV has been tremendously successful channel. I go to B2B conferences a lot. And one thing that I've kind of observed going to these B2B conferences is, just 2 or 3 years ago when I go to these conferences, it was a lot of curious B2B marketers there, open to the idea of doing TV advertising. I'd say this year was fascinating in that it was the first year where going to those same B2B conferences, nearly everybody had already ran CTV campaigns already as B2B marketers or were already committed to doing so. So the sort of convincing, the convincing B2B marketers to kind of take up CTV as a channel, I mean, that's just gone now. B2B marketers are sophisticated enough now to know what the opportunity is here. Now, in terms of what they're doing on CTV, it's it's from a first-party targeting standpoint, as I mentioned before, a lot of these folks are doing ABM, and so they're bringing in their ABM lists and targeting with ads. What's even cooler from an ABM standpoint with CTV is depending on how you're slicing and dicing your ABM lists up, you could be serving different TV creative to these users. Now, this I'm not I'm not breaking new ground here to tell marketers that they should like segment their creative based off their audiences. However, I think that is a bit of a new paradigm for TV advertising to kind of think about TV advertising in such a segmented way. Because again, in the old world of linear TV advertising, you spent all your money on one big TV commercial for this time period, and you ran it as much as possible until you turned it over with one other new asset. But now, again, back to this recurring theme of TV being indistinguishable in some ways, at least operationally or functionally, from other performance marketing channels. It's the same formula that you're already doing on paid social, for example. You're segmenting your paid social audiences, serving them different ads based off of some sort of characteristic. And it's the same on TV. So we've seen some really savvy B2B marketers do some great segmentation and alter their creative based off of the specific audiences that they've been seeing. There's also been, a lot of utilization of third-party audience segments. That stuff's pretty obvious. There's a lot of audience segments specific to B2B that have been of great benefit to B2B advertisers. But finally, one one other aspect of we've talked about conversion tracking, and for many B2B marketers, not all, but most, they're doing advertising for demand gen purposes. And so their ultimate conversion action is generating a lead as opposed to driving a purchase on an e-commerce store. And so that's something that we do at Mountain, for the CTV campaigns that we run. The conversion track action that we're tracking is an actual form submission, because we're doing it for demand gen purposes as well. And so system works just as nicely, even in this case, and it takes those signals and uses those signals to further optimize the delivery of the campaigns going forward. So again, I think to any B2B marketer who's listening to all of this, this probably all sounds very familiar to them, even if they haven't already been using CTV. But a lot of these things functionally are sort of familiar to a B2B marketer, and we've seen a ton of success with B2B marketers, as we do as Mountain. One final point I'll make on this is we're a heavy duty B2B brand on CTV. We advertise aggressively on CTV. When I go to conferences, one of the first things I ask the room is, who's heard of Mountain before? And everyone raises their hands, and that's because we target people really aggressively with our TV advertising, and it's become a pretty indispensable channel for us. I know that in any given month, between 20 to 25% of all of our website traffic is directly attributable to the TV campaigns that we're running. And so that is, we're talking about a quarter of the website's total traffic. That's a lot of traffic for a brand like Mountain. I can never turn it off at this point. We're highly dependent on TV as a channel. And that's as a B2B brand.
So then, being that, CTV has lowered the barrier of entry for marketers looking to get into television advertising, for the folks who are looking to get started with this medium, what would you recommend they look for when they're evaluating the different platforms available?
I think the things that we've kind of mentioned already, having rock solid attribution, that's for me as a marketer, just speaking as a marketer, that's something that is important to me, because I have a whole measurement apparatus that we've built to track the performance of all of our campaigns. And we'd want something that has some sort of reporting parity with the other performance marketing channels that we're running. And being able to, as with any other performance marketing channel, just have like a clear and immediate understanding of the impact of this channel to help us influence how we're going to budget for that channel going forward is critical. And the reason why I'm mentioning this, even though it may feel obvious, is there's other CTV solutions that I'm sure are great in certain respects, but they commingle linear TV inventory with streaming TV inventory. And as soon as you commingle linear TV inventory, you're compromising the reporting, because it's just measured in a fundamentally different way. It's targeted in a fundamentally different way. And being able to, as we know from years and years and years of abstract Nielsen reporting, being able to efficiently target and measure your outcomes from TV campaigns is vague. And so something that would be important for me is something that's totally programmatic, that's performance oriented, and has like a rock solid sort of attribution layer to the whole technology. That would be really important to me. And then from a targeting standpoint, just having flexibility in terms of being able to target efficiently with both first party and third party data, because your initiatives are constantly changing. You also, this is another kind of like marketing 101 thing, and I don't mean to patronize the audience, but everybody's kind of aligning their marketing campaigns with the funnel. And so being able to run a sort of more sophisticated TV advertising strategy that aligns with the marketing funnel, where some campaigns are prospecting and focus and serving to broader audiences for top of the funnel, and then just doing a lot of site-based retargeting to really drive people over the edge and get a conversion. A platform that could sort of accommodate these sorts of core performance marketing objectives, I think, would be really important. So I guess a neater way to answer this question is whatever matters to you when you're evaluating any other performance marketing channel, bring that same criteria over to your evaluation of CTV channel. That should also be applicable.
And then just to shift gears a little bit, what are some creative considerations CTV advertisers should make? Should they focus on running interactive ads or including QR codes, or, what would that sort of look like?
Great question. This is one of the most common questions that I get from folks who are just about to take the plunge. I think it was Coinbase that did the famous sort of Super Bowl ad where it was kind of like a screensaver QR code, and I think that inspired a lot of people. There's a couple of responses specifically to the QR code piece, and then we could just kind of talk about creative considerations broadly. As it relates to QR codes, the short answer is you don't need to do it. Again, assuming you're using a platform like Mountain with all the attribution sort of built into the platform, the assumption for a lot of marketers is I need the QR code to be able to measure who saw the ad and visited my website. But when you have an actual attribution system built into it, the platform's going to be able to report back to you how many people who were served the ad actually wound up on your website and also converted on your website. So you don't need to burden yourself with putting QR codes and hotline numbers and all this stuff as a kind of carryover from like the linear TV world. You don't really need to do it for the sake of attribution. It doesn't hurt in any sort of way, but you don't need to do it. Also, if you're relying on that for attribution, it's just going to be an incomplete view into the success of your campaign. Now, that being said, we do have advertisers that do use QR codes in their ads. It's not to say you shouldn't do it. Usually the recommendation in this case is use a QR code if you want to drive someone to a specific experience on your website or a specific offer on your website. Because really, generally the way it's going to work is ABC company runs an ad on TV, someone sees that and goes directly to the website to go check out what they're selling. The platform would capture that. But if ABC company wanted to route people to a seasonal campaign, for example, or if they had a specific promotion that they wanted to offer specifically to the people who are served the TV ad, then they may want to put a QR code where the destination URL for that QR code is to a specific landing page. Then that sort of makes sense, and that's sort of the common use case we see with QR code usage in TV ads. And more generally, just to kind of telegraph another question that we get related to creative is, I'm motivated to advertise on TV, but I'm just not some big brand that has a relationship with a creative agency. And what do? I don't have a full-time videographer on my team. Like, how do I actually do this? And the answer there is there's just a variety of ways to actually put together a TV commercial. It's not as daunting as it may sound. In fact, most of our advertisers, I would suspect, a vast majority of them probably don't have a formal relationship with an ad agency to be able to just produce TV commercials for them around the clock. And so, the path of least resistance for a lot of advertisers is repurposing social video assets that they already have. So if they have, if you're likely already doing video advertising on social, just most marketers, they have some sort of video advertising in their marketing mix. And so repurposing those assets. Now, the caveat with repurposing social video assets to TV is the specs on TV are a lot higher than they are for social video assets. Just because you're talking about a TV set, the resolution is really high. So it may not be as simple as just taking that actual video file that you're running for on Instagram video and running it on TV. But if you have access to someone who can do editing, they may be able to re-export that video at a level of specs that sort of satisfies the requirements for TV ads. Another thing that is a useful option, which sounds like a plug for Mountain, and I guess it is, but I do think, though, that it's very useful for marketers to know this, is a platform called QuickFrame. QuickFrame is a marketplace that Mountain acquired a couple of years ago, but it's a marketplace where anyone who has a video need can go on this marketplace, and the marketplace has over 5,000 creators all over the globe, and they have a variety of skills from post-production editing, motion graphics, animation, to full-blown TV commercial shoots. Whatever you want, you can get with QuickFrame. So you just go in, create a brief, it gets priced out for you, and you get matched with a maker to help you create that asset. I'm mentioning it because for a lot of marketers, another like quick and easy way to get started with TV advertising is you're likely sitting on some assets, some video assets, either product photos, B-roll, something that you can get to a post-production editor, and they can stitch that together into a really compelling bit of creative for people. And so just to kind of like, now that I'm shamelessly plugging QuickFrame, just to kind of go all in on it, if you want to see examples of it, go to quickframe.com/madewith. And that's a whole gallery of just, hundreds and hundreds of videos that were made possible with makers on the platform, just to get a sense of like the level of quality. They're totally TV quality commercials. You've likely, I should say, you've all seen QuickFrame, products before, like products of like QuickFrame projects before. It's the TV commercials that you're just kind of seeing day to day anyway. But a lot of marketers are sort of surprised that with assets that they're already sitting on, they could just get some post-production editing support really affordably and really quickly. They'll have a TV ad, something that you'll absolutely run on TV that actually serves the brand pretty nicely. But those are some options that I would say that don't involve a full-blown engagement with a creative agency, which could be really expensive and time-consuming.
Perfect. Then I'd like to spend some time talking about, how you're saying everything could be repurposed. For example, you mentioned that CTV video could be repurposed from video that was initially used on social. So that kind of naturally asks the question, how does CTV fit into an overall omni-channel strategy?
The thing I always like to make clear to marketers that I'm talking to about CTV is like, don't mistake the enthusiasm as a recommendation to abandon your other performance marketing channels for CTV. We would never recommend that. We don't do that ourselves. We advertise on a wide variety of channels. And so just want to be totally clear. This is, in my opinion, the third pillar of a strong performance marketing strategy between paid search, paid social, and performance TV. That's really the way that we would kind of position it. And we think that the interplay between the channels is tremendous. We've done studies before of the halo effect created from CTV advertising. And I don't have the numbers offhand, but it's been documented, and you can find it on our website. But essentially, what a lot of advertisers find out is that a residual benefit of running a CTV campaign, beyond just the direct attribution that they're getting of, I'm running my campaign and I'm getting these many site visitors and this many conversions out of it, a residual benefit of it is a lot of advertisers start seeing their paid social campaigns sort of starting to spike in performance, because it's driving a lot of traffic, it's filling up retargeting pools for other performance marketing channels, which is creating more impression opportunities, on those other channels. We've also seen advertisers see their organic search results benefit from their CTV campaign. So their branded search is positively affected by running a TV campaign, which makes sense. Someone sees an ad for a brand, and their instinct is to go to Google and Google the brand that they're learning about. And so, um, it's a tremendous complementary channel to the other channels that everyone certainly is already kind of using. And again, seeing that how it kind of creates this halo effect on the other channels is just tremendous. It's kind of a force multiplier on the other pillars of performance marketing that you're already using. So when they're all at full strength, it's tremendously impactful. Like I said, avalanche of traffic coming to our website from all the CTV advertising that we're running, and then all of this sort of boost that it's giving to the paid search and paid social campaigns as well. It's and then our retargeting too. We're, as a B2B brand, like all others, we're advertising aggressively on LinkedIn. Our LinkedIn retargeting campaigns grow because of all of the traffic that's coming from our CTV campaigns. So just a tremendous downstream effect that comes from running these ads.
Perfect. And then one statistic that I found very interesting from our survey was that CTV is only going to continue to grow. Just 4% of respondents don't plan to use it at any point in the future. So given all that growth potential, what are some of the things that you're most excited about seeing in the future of CTV advertising?
In the case of Mountain, our big product feature this year that I think the effects of it have been pretty seismic for a lot of advertisers, is something called Mountain Matched. And Mountain Matched sort of the reason why it's been so impactful is because it's hitting at one of the most important components of putting together any sort of advertising program, which is essentially your audience targeting. And so with Mountain Matched, we've unveiled keyword-based targeting for TV campaigns. And what's been interesting about Mountain Matched is it's been particularly impactful for brands that discoverability is a huge concern for them. So think of like brands that are entirely new product categories. And these are brands that typically thrive with social media advertising because, in like a video ad unit, they're able to demonstrate the product. Someone can see it. They say, wow, I didn't even know such a thing existed. That sounds great. I'll buy one. But paid search really can't help you as an advertiser in a case like this because if this is a new product category that people don't even know exists, how would they ever search for it inside a search engine? And so there's a lot of marketers that have this dilemma. And maybe it's not necessarily a new product category, but finding their exact audience isn't always necessarily obvious to them. Or maybe they've found their audience and it's really narrow, and there's companion audiences that would be really a great fit for them, but they just wouldn't know specifically where to look. And again, they're trying to be efficient with their budgets too, so they don't want to be too adventurous with their audience targeting. And essentially what's happening with Mountain Matched is as an advertiser goes live with the Mountain platform and they put in their URL and they put the tracking pixel on their website, what's happening is, the buzzword of the decade, AI is really sort of deployed at this point. Mountain sort of deploys AI, it browses an advertiser's website and develops an understanding of what this advertiser is selling. And from that understanding, it generates an initial slate of keywords to target. And these keywords are, experientially, when you're inside the platform, it looks and feels like you're in some sort of like paid search advertising environment because you're seeing all these different sorts of interest-based keywords that were generated based off of your website. And from there, you can kind of edit them. You can add or subtract keywords based to kind of further refine the system. And these keywords are sort of tied to a large sort of identity graph that Mountain has created. Kind of talked about it earlier in terms of how this graph is used for the sake of targeting households. But with this graph, it's taking in a lot of signals. It's taking in signals based off of bid requests that are happening in advertising platform in ad exchanges. It's taking web browsing behavior. and a variety of other signals. And it's allowing you to use keyword-based targeting to identify your audiences rather than having to like manually sift through a directory of third-party audiences. And what we've seen is just tremendous performance gains from people doing advertising this way. And I remember the sort of paradigm shift with deploying Mount Matched for advertisers. Essentially, once you start seeing success with running keyword-based campaigns, and by the way, we're doing it as a B2B advertiser again, and our campaigns have been performing really well. You start, it starts making manual audience targeting where you're kind of manually choosing all of these audience segments. It makes it feel very antiquated. Because in this case, what's happening is the system is responsible for taking the interest segments that you're looking to target and matching that with its understanding of this large database of consumers that it has to target. That matching technology feels way more efficient than you going in and sort of manually just checking off a bunch of third-party interest segments that you think align with your audience. And again, the big breakthrough here specifically has been for brands that traditionally have a hard time identifying audience segments or finding audience segments that even exist for their target audience. In a case like this, the technology behind the scenes is doing all of the work, evaluating a huge device graph or user graph with a wide variety of signals to identify the users who are best positioned to actually convert on your website in a far more efficient way than if you were to try to manually select audience segments. And so that's the feedback that we've gotten from advertisers, is that most of our advertisers are just running Mountain Matched targeted campaigns rather than anything that's sort of manually targeted, because the gains in performance have been significant, and it kind of relieves them of doing all of this like test and checking sort of work of just choosing an audience segment, running the campaign, seeing if it moved the needle or not. Now the platform is just sort of self-optimizing at this point. So just like on other performance marketing channels, people are just setting and forgetting. Like they just set up the campaign, set it up with Mountain Match targeting, set the core base of keywords that narrow the interests, and the platform is going to match them to consumers that are likely to convert. So that's been sort of the big breakthrough. This one's specifically unique to Mountain, but that's really the future of TV advertising as we know it.
Perfect. And I'd like to shift gears a little bit here and, turn things over to take some of our audience questions. We've had a few good questions come in, and I've been keeping track of them. So the first question that we received is, there's been a lot of talk about AI this year. How will that factor into CTV in 2025?
I think that feature that I just kind of mentioned, Mountain Match, is highly dependent on some key AI technology. I guess more broadly, this is just kind of speaking like technically, and this also might not be unfamiliar to a lot of the advertisers here, but when we think of just digital advertising and the evolution of digital advertising, in the earlier days of digital advertising, everything was quite manual, not just the audience targeting piece, but just how you put your ads together. For those that are really familiar with search advertising, putting together a search advertising campaign 10 or 15 years ago, you wrote the headline, you wrote the description, you put the link in there, and think about how that's evolved over the years. Now the default for search advertising is just components. Now you just provide a series of headlines, a series of body copy, a series of site links, and any other component that Google could put together either in ad extensions or in the body of the ad itself. And what the platform is doing is it's dynamically reconstructing the ads for every individual user that's served an ad. And there's a lot of machine learning technology behind the scenes to make platforms like that succeed. Similarly, on the paid social side, Facebook's made a ton of strides, a lot with machine learning technology, to optimize your campaigns for everybody who's served the ads. And again, it's similar. It's kind of like component based, where you just kind of give it characteristics of the ad or components of the ad, and it just gets dynamically reconstructed based off of the user that's actually being seen the ad. And so we're seeing the same, at least in the case of Mountain, we're seeing the same sort of continuation happening, Whereas previously, you bring the ad and you manually choose the audiences that you want to target. Now, using like AI technology, not only is the audience being found for you using all this technology, but more importantly, it's the optimizations that are happening. We're talking about like thousands of optimizations to your campaign every minute. And, again, thinking back to like the days of media buying 10 years ago, which isn't a long time ago, where you're manually managing all of these campaigns and changing things like, um, you know, all sorts of like kind of characteristics to the campaign, like bid modifiers, or, altering your budget or day parting, all of these sorts of things. Now the platform's just doing that for you at a scale that's just impossible for a human to kind of keep up with. We're talking about thousands of optimizations a minute, and that stuff compounds and it's happening dynamically, continuously, indefinitely, if you're just running an evergreen campaign. And that's a lot of technology behind the scenes that sort of enables that. But the gain there for a marketer is you now have a platform that's essentially seeking the best performance possible, even while you're sleeping. And it frees up the marketer to focus on other things. In the case of TV, really what it frees you up to do is focus on your TV creative. Because at this point, all of the technical aspects of running a campaign have largely been automated away for you. And they're in, either the audience targeting and the reporting piece, all that stuff, or the campaign optimizations. It's all stuff that it's going to be doing better than humans anyway. And so, really, the last sort of variable for an advertiser to control is the creative itself. What are you saying in the ad? Is the ad compelling? What is it pointing to? And so that's really going to be the what's left for marketers to kind of configure.
All right, awesome. And then someone else is wondering, what is something your team did differently this year or will do differently next year to make the most of your CTV performance?
One thing that a lot of people know about Mountain is our chief creative officer, who's Ryan Reynolds. And, yes, Ryan really works at Mountain. It's kind of surprising for a lot of people to kind of hear that. All of the creative that people have likely seen with Ryan promoting Mountain is, it's Ryan's ideas, and they've been tremendously impactful for us as marketers. One thing that we did this year that I remember was kind of surprising to a lot of my marketing peers, because a lot of them just kind of looked at me and they were like, all right, dude, you're on easy mode. You have Ryan Reynolds in your TV commercials. You just run those all day long and, you count the leads that kind of come in. And it's not to say that the ads aren't effective. They're certainly really effective. However, one sort of observation that we made earlier this year was that, when a lot of the ads that we run with Ryan are sort of brand awareness campaigns. They're top funnel. They're introducing people to Mountain. What we observed is we had a lot of people who are sort of mid to low funnel who already had an exposure to Mountain. Maybe they've already even visited our website, and showing them a Ryan ad that's introducing them to Mountain was redundant. And so what we did was we kind of segmented our creative and we created new ads specifically for people who already had exposure to Mountain. And in these cases, being a technology platform, with these ads, we instead focused on showing them the platform or speaking freely about specific features in the platform in a way that we wouldn't do with a top funnel campaign. And predictably, it was tremendously successful for us. We had we reduced our cost per acquisition by 60% just by running this campaign alone, and other sort of performance gains from just doing this. And I made this point way earlier. This is kind of like digital advertising 101 to kind of segment your creative by audience. But when you have Ryan Reynolds, you just kind of want everyone to see the ads. But at this point, we kind of got a little bit more kind of sophisticated with the targeting, and also we're benefiting from some pretty high brand awareness at this point now too. So we can kind of afford to segment out the creative. But that's been tremendously impactful for us.
Wonderful. And then someone else is wondering, I'm new to CTV. What's the first thing you would focus on to see a return on my investment?
Really making sure that you have good creative, being thoughtful about the messaging in that creative, because if it's going to be your first campaign, you don't want to sort of squander that sort of experience that you have with that first campaign. You want to get good results from it to be able to kind of modify your campaign and grow it from there. And so a good starting point would be just really good core creative for your brand. And what I specifically mean there too is just kind of like not necessarily um, a really provocative ad campaign that may be a little ambiguous because you're just trying to be clever as a marketer, but something that's a little bit clearer about what your brand does and what it sells. You could do that in a way that's still compelling, but I would take that approach from a creative standpoint. And then again, choose an advertising platform like we've talked about here that is positioned as a performance marketing platform. Really, in this case, you want to make sure that you're running campaigns on a platform that's going to optimize for conversions. Because ultimately, as a small brand doing this for the first time, you're probably in a place where you need a positive return on any platform that you're using. You can't really afford to just dip your toes in the water with brand marketing campaigns. And so something that's kind of conversion focused is certainly important.
All right, perfect. And then we're coming up on time, but I want to grab one more question before we sign off for the day. And that one's going to be, I have a limited budget for creative. Do you have any tips on how to make video assets on a shoestring budget?
I'd run back everything that I kind of mentioned with regards to just the resourcefulness of using existing video assets. Either, if you feel comfortable doing that editing yourself, someone who's good at that, they could do it, or going to a platform like QuickFrame and getting a post-production editor for a really, really affordable price to stitch them together in a sort of coherent way. But it's certainly possible. I remember a couple of years ago, this video went viral on TikTok of someone was listening to, I think, Dreams by Fleetwood Mac while riding a skateboard and drinking, cranberry juice, right? And TikTok had a really successful CTV campaign where they took that vertical video and just edited it into a TV commercial. Like with good editing, you could totally do it. They just sort of they framed it really nicely. They kind of staggered a couple of different frames of other people sort of mimicking that video, and that was a CTV ad. And from if an editor saw that, they'd say this is one of the easiest things to sort of edit. So with really, basic starting materials, just B-roll or product video, whatever you have, just getting it edited together, whether you do it or I'd recommend getting a proper editor to do it. But it's not that expensive. You could get it done really quickly. But that's how I'd recommend someone to be resourceful.
All right, wonderful. So that is unfortunately a wrap on our discussion today. Allie, thank you again for chatting with me. And to our audience, thank you again for tuning in. Before everyone signs off today, I'd just like to give a quick reminder about our survey. It's going to launch automatically in just a minute, so you can share your thoughts and feedback on this session. All right, folks, that is officially a wrap. Thank you again for joining us today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.